Hey,
Hello.
Scott. Oh, you know what? Of
Oh,
course you
what?
can't hear me too. This isn't on. Hold on. I think after.
Welcome back.
Hello,
Hi.
Scott.
I'm here.
Hey. Okay, sorry, I hadn't turned my USB ports on for the thing. I have this
Got it.
powered USB hub which has like buttons to turn on and off the ports. So when I'm wanting, so it makes it convenient for me. I don't have to unplug my headset or whatever. Or I just hit the on off button on the thing.
That's cool.
Uh, so let's see. Well, a few things we could talk about. One thing I want to show that's kind of cool, although I don't think you probably want this to be the episode, but let me show you something Isaac and I have been working on the last several days. So this is a. I unplugged the sound because the sound would be. Wait, can you even see it on here?
Yeah.
Hey, is it moving? Oh,
It looks Mario-y.
uh, exactly. Exactly. In fact, I'll plug this in so you can hear it right now. I just don't want to do it because it's Nintendo music.
Uh-huh.
But so
Ha 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 ha
we made it.
ha.
We made our own Mario game,
That's
and there's a
awesome.
Goomba, and I just died by hitting
Oh my
Goomba.
god. That's
So
awesome.
anyway, I just wasn't gonna. I just unplugged the speaker from it because Isaac insisted on putting the real Nintendo music, and I don't know if we
Sure.
get in trouble for if not that they would notice probably, but I'm just
Uh
being
well,
extra
if in,
extra cautious.
in fairness, if somebody's going to notice, it's going to be Nintendo.
Right, you and I have had this discussion many times. That's why I brought it up. That's why I bring it up. Uh,
Okay.
you know,
That's that's pretty cool.
so that is a project that he and I have been working on for like several days now, adding new features to it as platforms and coins
That
and
is so cool.
Goombas now. I'm still working on the death sequence when you hit it when you touch a Goomba, like what animation it'll show by making your Mario. But I'm glad that you saw it right away and thought it was Mario because that's what he wants. That's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Oh yeah,
Um, then
absolutely.
then
Even
we also
even with the inevitable glow blur that you get with a
and
screen to
then
a
then I
camera to a
have
screen.
this.
Oh,
Then I have this, which I just tried setting up today, and I haven't figured out how to program yet. But the idea is to eventually put that on this. Um, but they're different technologies.
yeah.
Like that's a straight LED matrix, and this is a unicorn hat. So this one's a
Uh
lot
huh.
easier to program because it
Yeah. So
has a
it's
library.
it's got controllers and stuff all built in.
I mean,
That's so
yeah, I
cool,
mean,
Abram.
to be honest, it doesn't have much built in. I pretty much just have it draw every pixel. I do use a library called Pygame from Python to help with it a little bit, but the actual drawing is all me just having figured out like how to have it draw the background and the what's the thing anyway. So let's talk about what I'm actually going to talk about. But I think I could show that at some point, right? Isn't that looks
Yeah,
pretty cool, right?
I think so.
Um, so at some point I'll put up an article about it, but I'll have to not call it Mario. I'll like call
A
it Marty.
a fan art platformer.
Yeah, a generic. I'll find some like generic sounds or something that sounds sort of like picking up a coin, but not exactly the Nintendo way. So so let's talk about what else I got that we've covered a bunch of things this week that Nvidia GTX 3090, RTX 3090. There's a lot going on there this week. Oh, and this was also Intel Architecture Week. So yeah, there's a lot of, maybe I should talk about that. There's a lot coming up. There's a lot coming up with both Intel and Nvidia graphics.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Although didn't we talk about?
The
Oh, we talked about
possibilities.
AMD. We talked about AMD overcoming AMD doing better than Intel, but
Yeah.
um, we now have um, some official stuff from Intel and some leaked stuff from AMD. So you know, it's something. It's something I could talk about. I mean, we also did, like I said, I try to not to bore our audience with this stuff. We also did like three big new Raspberry Pi things this week, but gotta have something else. We did our cases roundup and some other stuff. So anyway, yeah. But I'll also show this little matrix because I think it's cute. I think people would think it was cute. Anyway,
Okay.
so yeah, the we can talk about the new Tiger Lake XD graphics and um, what we're looking at with Intel and the future of chips in the next few months.
Okay. Oh. So I'm looking at your best streaming platforms, and I saw that Caffeine was on there, and
Yeah.
I have my opinions.
What's
on
your
Caffeine.
opinion? What's your opinion on it? You don't like it?
They don't have RTMP, so you're very limited in what you can and cannot stream into it. So you can't do a whole lot of like custom stuff like a professional game streamer would do. Through external control.
That's sort of what Janae. I mean, she didn't say RTMP, which she probably should have. She said they only support certain games. Which.
And they send me PR emails all the time, and I always reply, "Do you have RTMP yet?" And the answer is always no. I'm like, well, then I'm not using your platform, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, she liked it. She likes it.
I like the idea.
I don't have the experience.
I like the idea.
I don't understand what the idea is exactly. What's so special about it?
Nothing. But they've done some big partnerships that have gotten viewers onto the platform.
Right.
So.
Right.
Anyway, I saw Caffeine on there, and the lack of RTMP is the only reason we're not there. So if you're listening, somebody from Caffeine, RTMP. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I will obviously have to.
Big omission.
I'll have to read the details on the rest of that. That looks like a fun piece. All right. You saw the other topics?
Yeah. Yes.
I like that you were able to answer my question before I asked it.
Yeah, I was just reading.
You knew what I was going to ask. I ask it every week.
Yep.
All right. And then I need to make sure that I'm recording. No. You. All right. You are a little further to your left than you usually are.
Oh, sorry. How's this?
That's perfect. Okay. Then I am ready. End.
Yep.
Here we go. Oh, not exactly. Here we go. Good evening from Plugkit Studios in Largo, Florida. I'm Scott.
I'm Abram.
And we are here with episode 570 of F5 Live Refreshing Technology for Sunday, August 16th, 2020. This show is a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. This week, there's an Uber problem in California, an Epic problem for Apple and Google, and a confusing problem for Netflix and Hulu. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, or a myriad of others, our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, or on our website, pluckitslive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are two ways that you can do that. First, you can join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern by going to f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us during the show, give us your feedback on the topics as we talk about them, or you can always subscribe at pluckitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, The Pilch Point, Pluck It's Live Presents, and a whole lot more, and of course find all of the ways that you can watch or listen. Abram, how are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. My son and I have been playing with a lot of LED matrices this week. It was something that we've been wanting to get to. I think I've mentioned on prior shows that I wanted to get into actually doing LED stuff to put behind me. We just set up a larger matrix that came in the mail, but I have a small one here that we did something cool, I think is pretty cool with. So this here is I'm sure you can see it. This here is a platformer game that we programmed on the Raspberry Pi using the Pimeroni unicorn hat, which is I just died, so it's being slow. But anyway, what it allows you to do is it allows you to. I keep getting killed by this Goomba. Okay, so it allows you to roll around and you can jump up and you can get coins and things like that. It is a platformer game that is sort of like a Nintendo game, but and we made a background with clouds and all that stuff, so it was kind of fun. So that's been some of my time the last few days, because that's all my son really wants me to do with him is do that and add new features. Right now we're at the point where it like you can run around and you can pick up coins and you can jump on top of the bad guys, and if you touch them you die. But I have to work on getting a better like death sequence, and then he wants me to make another level where like if you go up to the top you'll get to another board which will have different platforms. But it's kind of a challenge. I have to say I have just a lot of even more respect for people who program games, because trying to program what happens if this dot touches that dot is really challenging, because it's not like there was a game engine or something. So if I have to say, oh, if the red dot that's the top of the head is going to go into the same position as a green dot that is a platform, make him stop like and hit his head and like come down again, because you can't go through an object or whatever. So that's kind of been the gist of it.
It reminds me a lot of
something that we've been working on
in God, I guess it was middle school, going through the code that came with DOS with QBasic for Nibbles, which a lot of people would recognize as the game Snake that came on Nokia phones.
Oh yes, there's a version of Snake that came with this LED matrix that you can play.
So I remember in middle school in one of our classes, well, not in the class, but during the class, we went through the code, and I don't think we were supposed to be able to access DOS, but doesn't matter. We were looking through the code and making changes and made it so that the walls allowed us to clip and go off to the left and come in the right, and things that the game wasn't supposed to do. And so, yeah, looking at the logic that supported, collision detection was interesting in a language that didn't have that concept, which is exactly what you're
right. I mean,
looking at now.
Maybe there's some way of doing it. I think the fact that we're doing it with LEDs and not on an actual screen makes it more complicated. We can't really create a quote unquote sprite this way, or at least not that I can think of, not that I could figure out. So, but anyway, fun. We have a bigger matrix off to my side here. This is 16 by 16, but we have a larger one that is 32 by 64. Um, that is about yo big, that we just got. And the goal there is to figure out how to get to show some cool information. Then I'm going to buy one or two more of them. Given the size of this, it might have to be two more or three more, and put them on the wall, hang them on the wall behind me, and have it show something cool. And the something cool, maybe the something cool will be a game, but I was thinking more along the lines of something that I could show during this show or during other shows that I'm on. I don't know if it's showing something like a topic or or what, but that's the goal. I'm thinking maybe I need, given the size of this, I'm thinking maybe I need, three more. Maybe I should do, instead of doing two across, maybe I should do two across and two down or something
Two by
like
two.
that. So I have two by two, because it's
64 by 128.
not very tall. Yeah, maybe a 64 by 128. I don't know. The thought. It's a thought, because it's just not. I don't know. I want it to be nice and big, so when you look at it, you're like, yeah, that's cool. Um, I think the thing I'll have to do is order. These matrices are not cheap.
Yeah.
The This one was 32 bucks, um, but AliExpress has ones that will ship from China and get here in a month and a half, for $12 each. So maybe I'll order three of those, and if they ever arrive, I'll have a nice big one. So
They'll, don't
we'll
worry,
see.
they'll be here by 2023.
Yeah,
Guaranteed delivery by August of 2023.
yeah. Now, what I don't know for sure is if they'll be, this, if the color will render exactly perfectly the same on them either. So
That's
another
true.
another
Yeah.
another open question.
Well, interestingly, my day has also been kind of covered by LEDs. I did some how-to videos on the smart illuminescence pixel systems. The what are they? The Prism and the Digit, and so those will be going up soon. So I got to play with some of the details on those, since our regular viewers will know that I played with them the day that we opened them, put them on the wall. The sticky did not stick to the paint on the wall behind me. They fell. I put these back up, and then we started moving the office. So I haven't really touched them much since then. So today was my opportunity to really mess around with them, and they're cool. I like them a lot. Anyway, that's so it's fun that you and I have both been messing around with LED pixel stuff.
You can never have enough RGBs.
Yeah, and when you can build a single panel that's got all kinds of pixels in it and do animations within that pixel, oh, super cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess from my side, we'll have those videos up soon, and I think Avram's gonna write about his little project too, right?
Yep.
So we'll have content on both of these things coming up on the various sites soon, so check that out. But for now, let's get down to some news. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, a new Xbox, games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store. And that includes the pre-order for the new Surface Duo, which I am super excited about, and everybody who knows me knows that I am. And of course, remember that current students and active military can save up to 10% on almost everything. And to find out about all of that, you can go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. All right, so we talked about this last year when when Assembly Bill 5 was passed in California that tried to coerce the gig economy companies into not considering their contractors as contractors, but instead as employees. Um, there was no way that that was not going to create trouble, because obviously that would be a complete departure for the business model for these companies, and it would require a lot of changes because, as we talked about at the time, the the idea that say Uber allows drivers to pick an area and hang out and kind of do what they want when they want. If they were paying an employee, that would not be the case. It would be a lot more like a taxi cab company. So there'd be a lot of changes to the business model. So obviously they made the minimum amount of changes that they thought they could to comply with the law. California disagreed and took them to court, and they tried to get a stay. It didn't work. So they basically have until August 20th. Yeah, that's right. 2020. August 20th to finish a full appeal, or come into compliance, or stop operating in the state. And I have a feeling up front, number 3 is going to be their solution, because there is a ballot measure, Proposition 22, that will be on the ballot in November, which would essentially override the majority of Assembly Bill 5. And I think these companies would back away for a short while to see how that goes before they spend the time and resources to change their business model. That's my guess. What do you think, Abram?
Yeah, I think you're right. This is
especially
a complicated
right now
situation. Yeah. I mean, this is a complicated situation because, and I hear this a lot from friends of mine who are freelance writers in California, that they're concerned about about Assembly Bill 5,
Yes.
preventing them from doing their job as freelancers because companies can't hire them for too many articles, or else they'll be considered employees, and
Yep.
then and some of these folks don't want to be employees. Like, they want to be freelance. They don't want to be full-time employees. They want to be, doing stuff piecemeal.
I spent
You know,
I spent 10 years as a software contractor, and I hear that this gets in the way of that, and I didn't want to work for a company. It took 10 years of me doing it before I said, okay, I'll work for a company again. I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be me.
But I think that the issue is there's also a lot of it goes both ways, right? There's definitely, for I think it's probably a lot more people who would like the security of, I mean, what are we really talking about, full time or not full time? We're really talking about health insurance, period, right? If you're not a full time employee, you don't get health insurance, and if you're a full time employee, presumably they have to provide you with health insurance. So, if California, or perhaps even the country, came up with better ways for people to get health insurance, we wouldn't have these problems. Because the reason that people want to be full time employees, and the reason that the state wants them to be full time employees, is to make sure that people are covered with health insurance. If uh, if they had an easier way for people to get health insurance, or they would, then it was more affordable, whatever, then I don't think we would have these debates. I think it's really all about the fact that the government of California, like many other states, wants people in that state to be covered by health insurance. They see that as an important thing, since first of all, people end up going bankrupt if they don't have health insurance, and then the hospitals end up hurt too, because people can't show up without insurance, and then even though they send them a big bill, they can't pay it. So,
right.
like, so I think it's really, I mean, what do I think will happen? I think that the political power behind Uber and some of these other gig things will probably lead to passage of that referendum. I think a lot of people are not happy. not happy with the way that this has forced the issue. Um, but there are also people who, quite frankly, there definitely are companies that have abused the system a lot, where they say,
For sure.
hey, we don't want to pay for benefits for someone, so it's so much cheaper for us to just pay this person as a freelancer, but treat them like staff. So I mean, I believe that there are also federal labor laws
Hmm.
that are equivalent to this. It's just that they're not as aggressively enforced.
Right.
But they, I
And
have over the year.
I think if they were, I think like if the federal laws that define what is a contractor and what is not were easier to enforce or uh, enforced at all, I think a lot of problems would be dealt with because the people who are when you agree to drive for Uber or Lyft, you're a contractor. There's an agreement between you and the company, an employment agreement that both of you have said this is how we're going to operate. But then there's those companies that abuse it where they tell you when to work. Oh, as soon as you do that, you're not a contractor anymore. Uh, you can't tell a contractor when to work. You can't tell them they can't take time. All that's as soon as you start violating those things, they're an employee. And the companies that do abuse it, if they're put in their place, I think a lot of the contract law problems would be minimized.
Yep.
So this is definitely going to be interesting. There are other states that are probably foaming at the mouth to see how this goes. That have been waiting for California to be the litmus test on what's going on before they try their own thing. Because obviously, court time and rewrites and a ballot measure and all that stuff, none of that's inexpensive. So I think the other states are waiting to see how California goes before they attempt anything. Because if things don't go right and Uber, Lyft, even some of the other ones, Instacart, things like that, if they pull out of California altogether, if Prop 22 doesn't pass, I mean it would definitely be a full stop for some other states that might be considering it. So uh,
Yeah.
this could turn into a Google News in Spain kind of a situation, or it could be, for those of you who have been very long time listeners, because I think that was 2012. Um,
Yeah.
but it's impressive that a story that old continues to be relevant, because I think that was one of the first times that a big tech company really took a stand and said, no, this is not good for anybody. We're out. In the modern big tech companies. So anyway, it could get interesting. We will know pretty soon because today's the 16th, so the 20th is Thursday. So we'll know what the next couple of months will look like in California real soon, and then after November we'll know what the permanent atmosphere is out there. And I have guesses, but I have no idea. I have guesses
Yep.
based on the past, but I don't know. California can be unpredictable, so
Yep.
you know, we will definitely have to wait and see on that. This week's Pilch Point with Avram Pilch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices, so you can use it just about anywhere you are. And right now, you can get a special price and a 31-day money-back guarantee by going to pilchpoint.live/PureVPN. All right, so we talked earlier about your current off-time project So, what have we got going on at Tom's Hardware right now?
So this is a big week for Intel announcements and Nvidia rumors. Intel held what they call the Architecture Day early in the week, and we were able to report on it on Thursday. And Intel released a lot of detail about a couple of things. They released a lot of detail about their upcoming Intel Xe graphics, and they released some details about some of their upcoming CPUs as well. So, Intel Xe graphics, first of all, take a step back. What's that? Intel has been known for many years to have the worst integrated graphics. In fact, let's put it more succinctly, the worst graphics, right? AMD had on their chips when they have integrated graphics is much faster, and everybody knows that Intel integrated graphics, the GPU that is built into your CPU, is nothing in comparison to an Nvidia card or an AMD card. Intel has not really played in the discrete graphics space, but no longer. The company has said a while ago that it's going to come out with its own discrete graphics, and it's going to actually have a new line of graphics cards and graphics processors called Intel Xe graphics. We saw somewhat of a demo of it um, at CES, where they were talking to us about some stuff that was going on with it. But now we have some more information. So, first of all, Intel claims that the the next CPU that's coming out, Tiger Lake, it's called, which will probably be Intel 11th Gen Core. They haven't said that will probably come out shortly. They haven't said exactly, but I think it's almost certainly coming out in September. And it will have the graphics on it will be Intel's Xe LP graphics, so it's integrated graphics. They claim will have double the speed of the 10th gen graphics that are out right now. So perhaps actually good enough to play real games. But, it's still integrated graphics, so, maybe we shouldn't get too excited. But then there's Intel Xe HPG, right? So they have Intel Xe and then a bunch of different letters. Intel Xe LP is the integrated graphics. Intel Xe HPG is high performance gaming. And that will not be out for a while. But from what we have read it and learned, it sounds like there is a decent possibility that the Intel Xe HPG will be as good as or better than some of NVIDIA's high end stuff today. It will be as good as or better than probably than an RTX 2080. Perhaps at some point in its life cycle, it may even be better than a 2080 Ti, which is the current top of the line. So Intel is doing a lot to add more compute units. It's doing a lot to add more processing power to the Xe graphics so that it can actually be a serious player in the graphic space. Meanwhile, it also has versions of Intel Xe graphics going into the data center, into places where where behind the scenes graphics are needed at really really high speeds. But also Intel is doing some things on the CPU front. So Intel is getting into something that we've heard about on ARM chips for a while, on the chips that are on your phones, called Big Little. Scott, do you know what Big Little is?
Um, Maybe it would depend on the context.
So Intel doesn't call it Big Little. I think only Qualcomm calls it Big Little. But it's some of your cores are faster than others. So instead of
Yeah,
having a
got it.
CPU where you have 8 cores and they're all the same, some of these cores, maybe it's not an even number, half and half. Some of these cores are faster than others and some are slower. Now, why would you want the slower cores? That sounds kind of lame. The reason is the slower cores use less power. So you can give more power to the high performance cores. So if you have something really simple like a video playing on YouTube, maybe that's going on the little core, the low performance core, where your game or your thing that you're video crunching or whatever thing that you're doing that's really eating up CPU cycles, maybe that is going on one of the higher performance cores.
I
So
remember,
right now,
I remember Intel talking about that concept when netbooks were popular. Like there was one core that was different than the rest on the netbooks, so that it would use less power, the battery would last longer, stuff like that. It's the same
yeah,
general concept, right?
yes.
Okay.
So now Intel is talking about in 2021 bringing that in what it calls the Older Lake S processors to desktops, to desktop computers. Right now, Intel has fooled around with it a little bit on its Lakefield chips, which which we've seen which we've seen actually on a Samsung notebook just recently. But for the desktop, where power consumption isn't as big of a deal, I mean, you're not worried about running out of battery if you're plugged into the wall. It's an interesting concept that hasn't been tried yet. And I think the reasoning is if you're going to give lower priority tasks to cores that use less power, you could then take the same power budget and give more power and higher clock speeds to the other cores that need it. So it's an interesting concept, and Intel is going to be introducing that in desktops in 2021 in something called Alder Lake S. Now, when these things come out, by the way, for those listening who aren't familiar with how Intel processor naming works, those are the code names. And the code names are the names that you probably want to talk about because those are the most distinctive. But they'll probably be marketed as Intel 11th generation core, or who knows, maybe by then they'll be marketed as Intel 12th generation core. But the actual name of the architecture that's being used is going to be Alder Lake S. Finally, I want to talk just real quick about Nvidia. So we got a massive leak this week because Micron, which apparently makes the GDDR6X memory for Nvidia, put something up on its website that it shouldn't have, and people found out that the upcoming Nvidia high-end card, which we now believe will be called the RTX 3090, will have this high performance memory that could deliver up to 21 gigabytes a second in performance, which is like unbelievable speeds. So if that's the case, you're talking about a card that, with perhaps some of its other improvements, could be twice as fast as the fastest NVIDIA RTX card today, the RTX 2080 Ti.
Wow. That twice as fast?
I mean, we won't know till we benchmark it. We say it could be twice as fast, and that's than the 2080 Ti. I mean, there actually is a more expensive card called the Titan RTX, and we don't know if it'll be twice as fast as that. But it's going to be obviously the fastest graphics card ever made, at least for the consumer market and for gaming. That seems pretty certain. Now, whether it's going to be worth the money that you're going to have to spend for that performance is anybody's guess. We have no idea what it's going to cost yet, but our graphics card editor, Jared Walton, believes that it's going to be well over $1,000. He thinks it could even be as high as $2,000. I don't know about that. Again, that is absolutely pure speculation. So we really don't know. But we had to talk about this on a special edition of the Tom's Hardware Show on Friday, and we had listeners come on, and one person said, "As long as it's $2,000 or less, I'll buy it." So it's good to know that even if the highest possible price is true, somebody's got the money for it.
Yeah, they've got one guaranteed user.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of money for a graphics card. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, we really don't know what they're going to charge. My guess is it'll probably be more in line with what the 2080 Ti cost at launch, which was, I believe, $1,200. Anyway, that was a lot of money back then, 2 years ago. It's a lot of money now, particularly in a global recession. But people spend $5,000 sometimes on gaming desktops. So if you're spending $5,000 on a gaming desktop, I guess what's $1,200 for what's arguably the most important component? So
True
if
enough.
you're gaming, your graphics card is the most important component. So yeah, I can see people spending a lot of money on it. Anyway, we don't know for sure when the new Nvidia RTX cards, which are codenamed Ampere, are going to launch, but we strongly believe that it'll probably be in the September timeframe, because um, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang is supposed to be giving a keynote at Gamescom on
Mm.
September 1st. So that would be a good time for such an announcement. We've also seen recently that Nvidia has been the amount of stock for RTX 2080 cards and some other Nvidia cards has been low. It's been hard to get to buy them. So that really suggests that the company is getting rid of old stock because it's coming out with new stuff very soon.
Yeah, that's pretty common behavior. We see that across the industry when a flagship's inventory level starts to dip. It usually means that a new flagship is right behind. I mean, look at Microsoft and the Xbox right now. So that makes sense. It doesn't sound like we're gonna have that long to wait, though.
No, definitely not. So it sounds like buckle in. We're going to have some really interesting announcements coming this fall, and really interesting new products coming this fall.
Very cool. And you've got information on all the stuff you know so
Oh,
far.
yes. Yes. If you go to tomshardware.com, we've got articles on Intel Architecture Day, on all the individual announcements from Intel Architecture Day, and on everything we know right now about the NVIDIA RTX 3090.
Very cool. Well, it sounds like the graphics card space is going to be real exciting and real hot over the next couple of months. Excited to excited to see that because sometimes it feels a little stagnant there. So it doesn't. That's not going to be the case the end of this year. So that's real cool. As always, Abram, I appreciate the information on stuff that I'm just not able to keep on top of, and I look forward to what we talk about next.
Yep.
This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. Get all the accessories you need to up your game on your PC, console, or mobile device from Razer. Whether you're looking for a gaming mouse and keyboard like we use here in the studio, accessories to up your experience on Twitch, or an entire gaming setup like the Razer Blade 15, you can find it all at Razer. And also and Project xCloud certified controller for your phone, and you can get all of that by going to f5live.tv/Razer. Definitely ran the wrong graphic at the end of Bilge Point Live. If you're watching live, that was on accident. Anyway, so to continue our strange legal topic show this week, this week went weird on me. We talked last week, and in fairness, a lot over the last couple of years about the restrictions on the app stores and what it has meant for and against the developers and the user experience. We know that Google Stadia, Project xCloud aren't coming to iOS because Apple doesn't have full control over what they do. And this week, possibly the most vocal of the opponents of the app stores, Epic Games, set themselves up to be able to sue. Now, let's talk about what happened. There's a rule in both stores that says that if on Apple it's always, on Google it's if you deploy through Google Play and you have in-app purchases that are usable in the app. I'll explain what that means in a second. The purchases have to be made through the App Store. So, in the case of Fortnite, which is the app that is in question here, the V-Bucks, which are the in-game currency to purchase skins and things like that, they are in-app purchases that are usable in the app, and therefore the purchases have to be made through the App Store API. Google and Apple both take a 30% cut, and a lot of companies don't like that. Now, there are apps, I know the one you're thinking of right away, there are apps in the store that do not process payments through the App Store. Amazon's a great example, and that is because the curtains that you purchase through the Amazon app can't be used in the Amazon app. They're used in your living room. And so that rule does not apply. But Epic decided to try and play on the line, and they said that the V-Bucks are not guaranteed to be used in the app because they can be used on Xbox, they can be used on PlayStation, they can be used on PC. So just because they're being purchased on a mobile device does not mean they will be used on a mobile device. And so they added direct purchases into the app, and as a little bit of a knife in the side of Google and Apple, they offered a 20% discount if you purchased that way. Obviously, neither company was happy. Apple swung first and removed Fortnite from the App Store within about 2.5 hours, if I remember correctly on the timeline. Fortnite was pulled from iOS. Gone. And they released an interesting statement basically reiterating their policies. And so Epic filed suit against Apple. Obviously, this move was intended to allow them to file this suit. It is it's an anti-competitive suit and was obviously drafted before the move was made. There's no way that they weren't 100% prepared for this. They knew what they were getting into. So they file suit. They make this big deal. They even release, oh, it's my favorite thing in the world, Avram. They released an altered version of Apple's 1984 ad rendered in-game with entirely Fortnite characters, basically saying that Apple had replaced IBM as the big bad wolf. And, oh my god, I loved it. After that video came out, Google pulled the app from Google Play, and the same lawsuit was filed against Google, and that's where we are right now. It's an interesting place. It's an interesting place to be.
But can't you? Wasn't Fortnite originally brought to Android as a side load?
Yes, and you can still do it. You've always been able to do it. They never took that ability away, so Android users can continue to get updated versions of the app to their devices. iOS, if you already have it on your device, they are not removing it remotely, which we learned a number of years ago that they have the power to do. They are not removing it remotely, but you will never get an update. If you have it through Google Play, they are not removing it remotely, but you will never get an update until this is resolved one way or another. I'm going to say Epic's not backing down. I think their ultimate goal is to have a mobile version of the Epic Game Store available on iOS and Android. That's
Well,
that's pure speculation, but based on their heavy-handedness here and their past dislike of what's going on, that's my guess of what's happening.
so what I don't understand is why did Epic go into the Google Play Store in the first place? Because they didn't have to be there. On Apple, they have to. There's no side loading on iOS devices.
When they went and made the decision on Android, it had a lot to do with ease of use. There's a lot of people who either couldn't figure it out or didn't want to figure it out. You know, even you and I pointed out the security risks of turning on the feature that would allow for you to side load. You know, that now there's an ability to side load and other stuff can come in that way too if you're not paying attention. So, you know, there were other concerns, and I think a lot of that move had more to of offering it for sideload on Android had more to do with proving that people wanted to be able to get stuff not through Google Play. I think they were building stats in preparation for this lawsuit. That's my guess. I think this has been their end game the whole time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they obviously were planning to do this. They know what they're doing. However, they bring up a very good point, which is that just like that old Star Trek episode, Google and Apple want a piece of the action.
Mm-hmm.
They want to have their cut for doing very little, for providing this, for allowing you to distribute your thing through their directory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they make a lot of money through this, but it's really quite an unfair system because they're taking money out of the developer's pocket for, you know, basically providing a listing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
or in this case,
of Google,
providing a service, a feature that the developers don't want. Because in this case,
right,
it's about in-app purchases. The developers don't want to have the users pay through the App Store, through Google Play. They want direct. It's less expensive. So they're getting charged 30% for a feature they don't want.
Right. They're taking the cut. And without these apps, these platforms don't have value.
Yeah.
So
ask Microsoft.
People would not buy. Right. People would not buy an iPhone if they couldn't play their favorite games on it. Or, you know, for some people would, if they couldn't get their favorite apps.
Right.
People would not buy an Android phone if they couldn't get their favorite apps on it. Mm-hmm. So this is obviously advantage Android, even though Google is not helping, but it's advantage Android because you can sideload. Mm-hmm. And funny thing, Epic actually made my discussion with my 8-year-old real because he doesn't play Fortnite, but we were talking the other day and he was saying something to me about why don't we own any iOS devices? We do not own any iOS devices in my house. And I was explaining to him how I don't like the walled garden of Apple and how they don't let you sideload. And he's like, well, what would you want to sideload? What would you? I was like, oh, some games. And he was like, oh, what? And now I said,
and it's super Fortnite. Theoretical. And it's with an 8-year-old, it's real hard to express a theoretical concept like that. But now you can say Fortnite. There's a hard evidence.
Before this, what were the things that you would want to sideload that you couldn't get, that you would want to use that you had to sideload? Can't name anything, right?
True.
I can't. Only if it's somebody gave you something like, oh, I have a program that I just want to give to you, Scott, or like at my job we have a battery test app, right? And so that's a huge convenience to be able to sideload stuff versus when you have something that can only go through a store and then you have to get approval for something or use some kind of really complicated rigmarole and pay for it.
I would say the unbelievable amount of trouble that I have had to go through to make sure that the Tom's Guide battery test can show up when a new device is available. It's because
Right,
at this point
right.
I'm the one who's
It's
managing that private listing,
the
and it is such a pain to make sure that the team
the
can
whole app
access it.
store concept is such a pain in the butt for developers.
Hmm.
I mean, on the one hand, it's good if you're really going for a mass market of people and you want, obviously, you want to show up there, you want people to find you, so that's good. But if you're just trying to make something to give to a few people and you have a platform that's closed like Apple's is, or like some other things, for example, Chrome browser, you want
Hmm.
to make a Chrome extension, right? I made a Chrome Chrome extensions for some of my coworkers, tried putting them in the store. Everything was good for a few years, and then Google just came along and was like, "Oh, we have to review these very carefully." But wait a second, only these are only for 20 people to use. Why do you keep rejecting them? Why are you paying somebody to look at this? So, like,
Well,
it's
that's an
it's a
interesting
really big.
point. I hadn't even considered why are you paying somebody to look at this when it's for
I
20
mean, they're
people.
wasting, and it's free, so they're not earning. They're not getting. There's no
Yeah.
chance of them getting any money from it,
Wow.
right? So there's no chance of them because the one good thing that these companies do, maybe someday they'll change their mind, is that they don't charge you money to distribute a free app. So if you don't
Hmm.
want, if you just want to make something that's freeware, then you don't have to pay anything, and they don't take a cut because it's a cut of nothing. So if you want to make free stuff,
They get their 30%.
not a problem, but they will still scrutinize it like crazy. The Microsoft store for Windows is the same thing. I had
Hmm.
a battery test that we wanted to install on computers around Windows 10s. Windows 10s
Yep.
can only download apps from the Windows Store. So I had to put it to the Windows Store. I had to put in the description, this is just for us to use in our office, and it won't work outside the office. It got approved, and then a day later, somebody looked at it after it was live and sent me a note and said, "This crashed when we tried it, so we're taking it down." Yeah,
I
it said
I
it'll only
told you
work when it
that.
connects to the server in our office. So anyway, they paid someone to waste their
Uh
time
huh.
on that, but and to make my life more difficult. So anyway, I can't blame Epic. This is very annoying.
And I'm
If you
glad that
if you've
somebody's
been
taking up the mantle.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
never
Because
would have
before this,
expected it to be Epic.
nobody was really willing to take that chance. Nobody was willing to annoy Google or Apple. In particular, no one wanted to annoy Apple, I guess, and
Right.
now they're willing to do it.
But
So
Fortnite's not
good for
going
them.
anywhere. We know that. Fortnite's not going anywhere. It won't harm Fortnite as a brand.
Well,
And
that's the thing. They're
they can
powerful
use,
enough to do it.
yeah, they can use their might to point at what Apple and Google are doing and say this isn't right.
They're powerful enough to do it.
Yeah.
It's like Netflix and net neutrality, right?
Hmm.
Netflix is powerful enough to champion net neutrality because people really want Netflix,
Hmm.
and Netflix has money, and people are going to want their Netflix no matter what. Whereas if I put up a website or an app or something and I wanted to do it and I have 100 people using it,
Uh huh.
I
Yeah.
can't afford to lose the money. So
The tons
good
of
for
money
Epic.
to file
Yes.
and pull this lawsuit all the way through, because you know at some point it's an antitrust case. At some point
Yeah.
this could literally bounce its way all the way up to the Supreme Court if it has to. So you and I
Yeah.
could
Now,
never take a case that far.
yes. Now I could see Google getting out of this because they have side loading. So they have there's a better argument on Google's behalf that they're not abusing their monopoly power because
Hmm.
hey, look, we're separating our store from the platform. If you want, we're just saying that if it's going through our store, we have control.
Hmm.
But Apple, on the other hand, doesn't allow you to sideload. So,
Right.
you know, I think the obvious remedy for this, which Apple wouldn't does really not want, would be to allow sideloading of apps on iOS.
Yeah, without a developer account.
Yeah.
Because we say this a lot, but in fairness, there are ways to install, even without having to hook it up to a development machine. There are ways to install an app directly to your device from a store, but you have to have a developer account. Your device has to be registered with a company who's paying for it. There's a whole rigmarole on how things like App Center and Hockey App work. But yeah, there's no direct way that, well, I can because I've got several, but there's no direct way that you, Avram, could just sideload an app. And even me, you have to know the people and you have to get on their account. It's it's a thing.
Right. It doesn't work. It doesn't scale. If you want to give it to 5 people, you could do it.
Right.
But it doesn't scale for thousands of people.
Right. But then, on Android, you can sideload. There are secondary app stores because there's a Galaxy store, right? There are other deployment
Amazon
methods.
store.
Yep. There are other deployment methods that don't use the Google Play services, which in reality, it's when your app uses the Google Play services, it registers with Google Play, and that's when the rule actually kicks in. But if you're deploying through the other stores, you're probably not using the Google Play services anyway. So it's generally not a problem. But, Android has some leniency in this, but Apple's got none. So we said this when Epic launched Fortnite as a sideload. We said this is going to be interesting to watch because this is just the beginning. And boy, were we right, because it was just the beginning. And I'd say we're still in the first 25% of this fight. So we will be keeping you guys up to date on this because, this could change the way Google Stadia, Project xCloud, or Game Pass streaming, or whatever they end up calling it, Facebook gaming, all of that. It could change how all of that works if this is ruled on in the developer's favor. So we are all looking at this closely. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by RiffTrax. Make fun of movies, or let these guys do it for you. Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, the former stars of Mystery Science Theater 3000, are back and doing what they do best, creating commentaries for Hollywood blockbusters and B-movie oddities. It's like watching a movie with your funniest friends. And to find all of the full-length features, the short films, and the live events that are coming up, you can go to f5live.tv/RiffTrax with an X. All right, so this one's not a lawsuit topic. Hooray! But it's not a great situation. So we know that in decades past, the browser wars were a big part of software development. It seemed like every company wanted to have their own browser, and to this day, I don't know why. And a lot of those software companies discovered that giving away a thing for free was not a great way to generate revenue. Now, today, there are pretty much 3 major players outside of Apple that are left, and that is Google, Microsoft, and Mozilla. Google and Microsoft don't necessarily care about direct revenue generation through their browser because they're big companies, but Mozilla, the browser has kind of been their primary focus for a long time, and so they've got some revenue channels through the browser. They charge for default search engines in certain markets and things like that. And they have done pretty well, several $100 million in 2018, which is the last number I saw. They generate some pretty decent revenue. But in the last year or so, development of the browser has slowed down. Usage of the browser has slowed down as a result. And the company has put an emphasis on finding some extra revenue sources. So they've been developing subscription services, like their VPN service, which is out in the wild. And they've got some other things in the works, but it turns out they were not prepared for exactly what it takes to build a new product from scratch. And these products have taken longer to develop, longer to get from zero to generating revenue. And as such, between shrinking browser market share, some search engine contracts expiring in November, and not getting these subscription services out in the wild as fast as they thought, their revenue is down significantly. And the end result, as anybody who could have predicted when they hear that revenue is down significantly, along with it comes layoffs. We saw some in January. There were 70 laid off in January, but this one's going to hurt. 250 employees are being laid off from the Mozilla Corporation, which represents a quarter of their global workforce. They are shutting down an entire development office, I think in Taiwan, and trimming in all of their other offices. It's not a great sign for an organization who even its biggest supporters have said in recent months that something is going wrong because the browser isn't getting updated and the things that have been promised haven't happened. And now with a smaller workforce, that's not better.
Yeah, they got a problem. They got a really big problem. But I think they've had a problem for a while. It's amazing that they've done as well as they have because the market share of Mozilla of Firefox is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I was just looking at one site, Net Market Share, says that their current market share over the last several years or whatever, last year, 7.8% of the desktop browser market. Forgetting mobile, where they're like nothing. I mean, you can get a mobile Firefox, I think, but nobody uses it. That puts them behind Chrome, which is 68.8%, and slightly ahead of Edge. Although I think Edge could very well pull ahead because a lot of people like the new Edge that's based on Chromium.
Yeah.
Then followed by Internet Explorer. Yes, I guess people are still using that, and Safari. So
if you combine the Microsoft browsers, because the user agents now add up to at least 3, I think Microsoft accounts for number 2.
Yeah, if you combine Internet Explorer and Edge, and maybe both Edges.
Yeah.
The old
Edge
and New Edge. New Edge is pretty good.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will really like New Edge. I've seen a lot of arguments to switch from Chrome to New Edge. So
I notice on this computer that my battery life is higher when it's my primary browser.
New Edge is supposed to be a lot better. I like New Edge. I'm still primarily using Chrome though because that's where all my extensions are and what I'm used to, and I'm used to it, and I've grown to like it. But what's really interesting about Chrome is it really shows the power of, I would say it shows the power of making a better mousetrap, although it's hard to say whether at this point it's because it's better or because it has so much momentum. But how old is Chrome now? 10 years, something like that. I remember when Chrome first came out, and I said, "There's no way that anyone's going to use this." Another great production by me.
Yeah.
And the reason I said it is not because it wasn't good. It was because, look, people tend to use what comes preloaded on their computer, and Internet Explorer came preloaded on Windows machines. So it's really hard to get people to go out of their way to download something.
Yep.
And install it over the default.
Especially when you take into consideration Microsoft did a data study, and they discovered that less than 2% of Office users change any settings.
Right.
It's the exact same kind of thing.
Right.
It's what's already there. I'm just going to use it as it is. The browser's already there. I'm just going to use it as it is.
Right. So
which was the gist of the which was the gist of the late 90s, early 2000s antitrust against Microsoft, was the fear that
Right.
people wouldn't install a secondary browser, and boy, did that not turn out to be the case.
Right. I'm still shocked.
I
I
know.
lived through all that stuff, and I'm still shocked that Google is dominating in the browser space when it's not preloaded, because because so many people are not tech savvy. They just go with whatever's on the computer. And so what this proves is, wow, actually there are people who are more tech savvy than we thought.
Mm-hmm.
They they realize that this is better than what comes for free, and they're downloading it. So so good for them. And that's on desktop. On mobile, of course, Chrome comes preloaded as your main browser on Android phones,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are on iOS, I think, tend to use Safari. Although you can get Chrome for it, but it's still using Safari engine. Or
Yeah,
Safari still doing? Is Chrome doing better than Safari on iOS now? Also,
I know a lot of people that the first thing they do with an iPhone or an iPad is download Chrome or today the new Edge, because if you're already in that ecosystem, the syncing works.
that I mean that's true too, right? Because what Google is providing you is they're providing you. There's so many Google services that you get the benefit of
Mm-hmm.
by synchronizing with it.
Mm-hmm.
People have Google accounts. They have Gmail.
Yep.
Mozilla doesn't have that ecosystem to
Right.
give people. Yeah, I know you can get a Mozilla account. I know you can synchronize to that, but I don't
But
think a lot
that's
of people do.
that's not the that's not the same thing as having a Google account that's got email and YouTube and Google
Right.
Meet
It's
and Hangouts and in the past Google Plus and all these things attached to it,
right.
or Microsoft that's got
Right.
that's got Skype and all these other Outlook and all these other things, your Office suite, all those things attached to it. With Firefox, it's what it is.
Here I have an idea. This is a bad idea, but I'm going to throw it out there because I think somebody might do it. Somebody will buy Mozilla and use it to push services.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody will not be Microsoft,
Nope, because they don't need it.
but because they don't need it, it will
And it
not be
won't be
Google.
Google because they don't need it. And it won't be Apple
But
because
what
they
if it's
don't need it.
Facebook? But what if
That
it's
could
Facebook?
be. Yeah. Because, when you think about it, uh, Mozilla, in theory, has been in multiple hands over the years. Because Netscape Navigator was solo. At some point, it was owned by AOL. It was spun off to the Mozilla Foundation. It's
Yeah.
it's been in multiple hands over the years as it
Yeah.
is. And its largest usage period was when it was owned by AOL, and not because it was built into the AOL experience, because weirdly it wasn't. But that was that age is when the Netscape browser had its biggest heyday, and interestingly, everybody thought that Microsoft could never make a go at a browser, and they might have been right. But
I want to see Netscape come back. I want to see them. I want to see them relaunch it as Netscape, and I want them to take the old Netscape logo with the flying stars, and I gotta have my Netscape back.
and the swirly N
Yeah.
as the
Well,
loading screen.
that was like, I think the swirly N was before. Uh, the one where it actually showed you the N, and then there was like stars coming down from this, or comets,
Uh-huh.
whatever, coming down from the sky.
And there was like a ring around the N, like a Saturn style ring that would like loop around as the loading screen. Which, by the way, if you're not a developer and you're thinking about it, the worst thing you can possibly do is use your logo to indicate loading times, because people associate your brand with slow.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
So many companies do it, and it is always wrong. Use a generic loading. Anyway, but yeah, with all the nostalgia stuff going on in tech right now, how Mozilla doesn't have a skin for Netscape Navigator is beyond me. They should definitely
Yeah.
have an option to skin it as Netscape
maybe
Navigator.
somebody does, and we don't know it, yet.
You can. It's the foundation is open source, so you could build whatever you wanted on top of it. So
Yeah,
there's
but
got to
even
be a
Linux
Netscape.
now. It used to be when I would install a build of Linux, I would often find that Firefox was the default browser because Firefox, I think, was
Open source.
Mozilla was considered to be less corporate. So companies like Ubuntu or like Canonical, I think, felt more. I don't know if there was any money changing hands in this, but I think it was usually the case that, hey, Firefox is the browser for Linux because it's more open source than Chrome, although
Yeah.
Chrome has Chromium.
It was
But
it was
now you see
it was
Chromium.
open it was open source by default. It had ad blockers. There were all kinds of Linux people type things. You know, they were the first browser to turn do not track on by default, and got sued for it by Yahoo. Um, uh, but yeah, there were a lot of Linux people type things.
But now a lot of Linux flavors, it seems like either they have both or they just have Chromium,
Yep,
which is Chromium is the open source version of Chrome.
it's the
Or
it's
they
the
have Chrome.
yeah, it could be both. But yeah,
Yeah.
the Chromium is the base, like the Open Android
Yeah.
project version versus Android, where Android's got all the Google services built in. Chrome's got all the Google services, but Chromium doesn't. For those
Yep.
trying to figure out the difference
Yep.
between the weird names, and you can tell Chromium versus Chrome because the Chromium is all grays and sad looking. The logo.
Yeah, the icon is blue. I think like shades of blue as opposed to like yellow, red,
Color
and
pop.
green.
Yeah, the Google colors, the big color pop. It's all like monochrome, which is funny.
But
Anyway,
for example, Raspberry Pi comes with Chromium, not
hmm
not Firefox.
okay, interesting. Well, I there's a possibility that so the thing they're up against, right? There's a possibility that they could get some of these services out there and start generating some revenue, but I think it's the services and things that have started getting the Linux community, for example, to start thinking, oh, they're going the other way. And if they're going the other way, well, we might as well just lean into it because Chrome's a better browser.
Right, that's the thing, right? Like if they're seen as corporate, then and not like open source friendly, then they're not going to get as much support from the Linux community. Now, I don't know
Yeah.
how much that's actually meant to them in terms of share, because I don't know how much it matters to them versus trying to get more people who are on Windows to download it. But
Yeah,
I
but
don't know.
in my experience, it's the Linux people and the Linux or past Linux people or the people who think in those terms that have been the biggest Firefox supporters. I have one example in my head that's an exception to that rule. Other than that, it's the super like open source anti ad
Yeah,
anti you know and so
yeah,
by sliding more that direction, I think they're alienating instead of embracing. So the, this could be the beginning of a transition of the Mozilla Corporation or the Mozilla Foundation into somebody else's hands. Like you said, where they can build services into it and actually generate revenue. I don't know. We'll see. But laying off a quarter of your staff all at once, not a good sign. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You know you get your free shipping on millions of products, but that isn't all you get. In fact, some of these other features may be your new favorites. For example, free music with Amazon Prime Music, free TV, movies, and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video. You can get free games and a free subscription on Twitch with the newly named Amazon Gaming, and a whole lot more. And to learn more, to get a 30-day free trial, to get easy access to all these features, you can go to f5live.tv/prime. It's going to take me a little while to get used to that new name. Anyway, so back to lawsuits, because apparently that's our thing this week. This one's a little weird. A small town in Texas named New Boston has filed a class action suit against Netflix and Hulu for violating the what's it called? I don't remember what it's called. Doesn't matter. It's a television transmission regulation in the state. So basically, if you're a television station in Texas, you have to get, whether it be broadcast or cable, you have to get permission from the Texas Utility Commission, Public Utility Commission of Texas. I knew it was something like that, to operate in the state. Makes sense. Especially if you're not broadcasting from there, you're relaying into there. It seems to have something to do with the relaying that makes you have to fall under this category. And so they are trying to say that because Netflix and Hulu check for a server and then connect to that server, that they are bound by this same transmission law, and they want 5% of all the revenue, which is a lot of money. But
wait, 5% of all the revenue in their town, or 5% of all the revenue Netflix makes everywhere?
Good question. The demands are not particularly specific, but as it's a class action suit filed by this particular town over a Texas state law, it's likely to be 5% of revenue generated via Texas, and the revenue, the money would be distributed across the class, which would be Texans.
Wait, so people who live there or the government?
Fair question. As it's a,
because I mean,
as it's a Texas law, it would probably go to, the class would probably be the whatever authorities within the Texas government would normally collect these fees.
Yes. So this is really lame.
It's a complete misunderstanding of how the internet works, because for me,
it's not a misunderstanding. It's a blatant attempt to find a judge who thinks that who can misunderstand it, so that somebody can get some payola.
Yeah, that's true. But as soon as this is if Texas were to win this, if this class were to win this, which they wouldn't, but let's say that they did, in the unlikely event that they did, as soon as it's appealed, it's no longer appealed within a state court. It would be overturned immediately. There's a 0% chance that it stands outside of Texas. A federal court would look at it and go, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Get out of my courtroom."
Yes, I mean, in effect, what it is it's a tax. It's a tax on Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if a state wants to issue a streaming tax on services, then I guess they can, but it ought to be fairly applied. Like, then I guess anybody who serves streaming into Texas, which is a lot of different services, will now have to collect an extra 5%, and it will raise the cost of Netflix 5% for people in Texas to go to their government. That would, I think, not go over very well.
The thing that is interesting is that it's all about the relay. It's all about checking what server, which is how the internet works, right? Because a lot of us have servers in multiple places, and you connect to a thing. It says, "Oh, look at that! The data center in Houston is our closest one," and I use that because it tends to be. Twitch Mixer, everybody kind of has a data center in Houston. And so, you connect to that, or you connect to DC or New York or LA or, wherever based on where you are. That's how a lot of the internet works. Even if you're just on Facebook, Facebook's got data centers everywhere. Is Facebook going to have to give up 5% of all their revenue in Texas because you and I share videos there? It seems like a thing that if they were to say this is the way it works and the courts were to back them up, which they wouldn't, but in that unlikely event, it's an environment that just could not be maintained.
Yeah, I mean, it's how long has this internet thing been around again? This new internet thing?
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Has been around since 1994, right? 26 years. Forgetting the internet was around since the 60s, but the actual World Wide Web, I think, was 1994, right? So 26 years they've had to figure out that it's the cloud. It doesn't matter where the server is.
And it took until Thursday for them to figure it out.
But they know this.
I know.
Look, it's the same principle as, was it British Telecom or somebody else who was suing over the idea of links a few years ago? And they wanted to shake everybody who ever used a hyperlink down.
Or the company that bought the patent from Yahoo that kind of described podcasting. And they went after Adam Carolla.
Right. I mean, it's a shakedown.
Yeah.
And this is a shakedown. Now, it's very unfortunate that they get away with this kind of a shakedown because someone's going to be making money on this, and it's going to be some lawyers.
Yeah,
so
which is always
Netflix,
how it works.
I can't feel too sorry for Netflix. I mean, they've got a lot of money, I guess, but if they have to give up one umbrella from the Umbrella Academy to pay to defend this, what a waste.
Ooh. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. Yeah, it's weird. The whole thing is weird. It's why I had to cover this week, because it's just such a strange story. Honestly, this could have been a great 420 story for us in years past when we used to do those episodes where we just cover weird topics like the flaming squirrel. It's just so bizarre, and it seems like it couldn't possibly go anywhere. And it seems like the residents of the town who are going to pay the legal bills on this, one way or another, have their own lawsuit to be able to file against the town for being stupid. But that's a whole different issue.
4,000, according to Wikipedia, which is never wrong, New Boston, Texas has like 4,600 residents.
Okay. All right. So the same number of people that lived on your old block in New York.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Probably my building. I lived in Manhattan.
It's just a whole so strange, and I'm never quite sure what motivates somebody to file something so goofy outside of either sheer stupidity or a weird greed that they think they're going to succeed on, and neither one of them are right. So, whatever. I don't know. It's strange. I'm going to keep an eye on it, though I think we all know where it's headed. And that is our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We always appreciate our live listeners. If you didn't join us live and would like to in the future, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, you can go to f5live.tv/join us and chat with us in the studio, or of course you can find us on our live streaming platforms. The best are Periscope, Mixer, and nope, not Mixer, Periscope, Twitch, and what's the other one? YouTube. Those are the three best to comment on because we'll see them. If you did join us and would like to subscribe, you can always go to plugkitslive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, The Pilch Point, Plugkits Live Presents, and a whole lot more. And you can find all the ways to follow us from there, including social media. And with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Abram.
And we will see you guys back next time. Ciao.